What's up, everybody? This is the Digital World Podcast, and I want to ask you one question. Do you know what you own? If you're involved in the cryptocurrency market, do you know what you own? I want to ask that question because there's a lot of people who don't know what they own. They see green candle bars and jump right in. Now, if you're trading and you know what you're doing, go ahead, you do what you got to do. But for people who don't and are just going based off what other people are saying, got to be careful. For those people who are well informed about their investments, good for you because you're on the right path. Now, I know what I own, and the reason I can talk about um, different aspects of it is because I know what I own, but I'm entertaining the ideas of what could happen. I'm positioning myself in the best way I can. Okay? And I do believe that this asset right here is going to be it's going to transform everything. Okay? Yes, I understand the good with the bad, and I am willing to uh, risk or be a little bit risky because nothing's guaranteed in this space. Nothing. Now, when regulatory clarity hits, I'm comfortable knowing that this digital asset, brings utility and will flourish in clear with clear regulation. I do believe that. Okay, and it's important to know what it is you own, how it's used, and what kind of softwares it's being used in, or what kind of different areas of finance it's being used in. Okay, what kind of utility does it bring to its customer? And that's very important to know. Okay, now throughout this, bear market all and all this FUD about the price, they always seem to be growing. Like Amazon, despite its price, they were still growing and making um, deals with other companies, growing their customer base. And people thought just because the price was low that it wasn't worth anything. So do you really know what you own? Now, I want to play a short clip to put things into perspective because you always have to evaluate both sides of the coin. Because when you evaluate both sides of the coin, you get a full picture of things. And so let's hear this clip by Jim Rickards. I've been really pushing this narrative because I want us to be fully aware of, all the possibilities that are out there and have intellectual conversations about this. And I'd like to hear your ideas or comments about what you think. Because in this manner, we all learn. Okay? So let's go and see what Jim Rickards says.
As one Greek official told.
And one thing I want to make clear is he just because he's an economist and has been well involved, everything he says may or may not be true. But you're hearing what he has to say, and you're creating a conversation about it. So just want to make that point before we watch the video.
Reuters, the banks are in a deep freeze, but the economy is getting weaker. This is a microcosm of what we're about to see in America and around the world.
But still, really, aren't Greece and Cyprus fairly isolated examples?
Unfortunately, if you think governments tend to keep their hands off citizens' assets, you're mistaken. Elites have a long history of seizing control of people, institutions, and especially money. In February of 1917, for example, the Russian elite, who believed in a one-world workers' party, closed the stock market, Folks lost every penny. Their portfolios literally vanished overnight. The Russian exchanges remained closed for nearly 70 years. They reopened in January of 1992. In December of 1941, China closed its stock market without warning. It stayed closed for 4 years. The German government closed the stock market from July 1931 to April 1932 during a credit crisis. The list of examples goes on, and it goes back decades.
But again, I have to ask you, could such a systematic freeze really happen here in the United States?
It already has happened, John, multiple times, just on a smaller scale. In 1914, the Treasury Department shuttered the New York Stock Exchange for 4 months. Citizens couldn't buy or sell. They couldn't cash out. They couldn't do anything. England's elites did the same thing to the London Stock Exchange. But we've seen more recent examples too. If you want to see what a modern-day Einstein freeze looks like, take a look at this image. Those blue dots represent trades on the New York Stock Exchange on July 8, 2015. You can see where they abruptly stop. That was the moment the elites running the exchange pulled the plug. You weren't allowed to buy or sell a single share, period. But I want people to take a closer look at this chart. Now imagine it represents all the banking and brokerage activity on Earth. You see that point around 11:33 a.m. when you had the first big drop-off in activity? That represents the beginning of the coming ICE 9 cash freezes. Now you see when all the activity stops and the screen goes totally white? All activity ceases. The system goes dark. The pattern is the same with these freezes every time. You have some initial trigger or shock, then you have an immediate freeze, and the elites emerge with more control. You see it over and over. Shock, freeze, power grab. Shock, freeze, power grab. With ICE 9, we'll see a global shock and a global freeze, and then we'll see the elites making a global power grab. Here's another example, again with the New York Stock Exchange. On October 27, 1997, the Dow had lost 350 points quickly. Again, the elites responded by shuttering the entire New York Stock Exchange instantaneously. Imagine if you had been trying to sell. Your money would have been locked into the system and your net worth would have been plummeting by the second. Meanwhile, you're just watching it happen, totally powerless to do anything about it. What we're seeing right now is an increase in the tempo of these mini shocks and mini freezes. They're coming faster and faster. You had 9/11, followed by a freeze. We had the flash crash of 2010, followed by a freeze. And in 2012 with Hurricane Sandy.
But you're talking about American stock markets. I mean, if the elites do freeze our exchanges and brokerage accounts, won't our cash be safe in the banks?
No. In fact, the biggest bank freeze to date happened right here in the USA. Of course, I'm talking about Roosevelt signing Proclamation 2039 in 1933. With one stroke of his pen, FDR shuttered every bank in America. A few weeks later, he followed up by freezing the entire gold market. Executive Order 6102 literally outlawed citizens from owning gold. That freeze lasted 41 years until Gerald Ford ended that freeze in 1974. When the coming crisis hits, we'll see this repeated on a larger scale through the IMF, World Bank, and the Fed. Again, there will be nothing the White House can do. They have no direct control over the institutions that will carry this out. Not even the U.S. president can control the Fed. Same with the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, or the People's Bank of China. When the crisis hits, it will likely be bad enough that Trump would get on board anyway.
Now, those are very interesting points. One thing I want to make clear is, let's say, well, first I want to say history, if it's any indication, gives us some clues as to what can happen. Just because we're in the US doesn't mean we're immune to this happening to us. There's been several examples and when the markets have been frozen, okay? Look at what happened with FDR and the gold act he signed, Executive Order 6102. It was, those things do happen. And like one thing he said about the cycle that keeps repeating is shock, an initial trigger event, right? That causes shock. There's a freeze, and then there's a power grab. And it's a repeating cycle. And, the powers that be are gaining more control. And we all know this. It's the unspoken thing that everyone knows. Okay? And one thing I want to make or bring to the forefront is, first of all, do you know what you own? And second of all, do not keep that on an exchange or anything. Keep it in cold storage. Because if there's ever a flip of the switch moment, if you know what you own and it has utility to it, then at that point, even if you can't access your bank account or whatever, or you're not able to access an exchange to sell out of your positions, but if you know what you own and you know the value of it, you don't have to worry that you're going to lose, because eventually that asset will come to the forefront and be used and its value will increase. And so the point I want to make is, yeah, what if there's a flip of the switch moment, right? And we all know that these cycles come and go, right? Trigger event, which is a shock, a freeze, and then it creates more control. And so, but, despite that fact, you still have to work with what you're given and seize those opportunities. And I believe that with XRP, a digital asset, you can do that. And so, despite all the FUD you hear of what others are saying, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself the question, do I know what I own? And if you do, and you've done your research, then you don't have to worry, because you understand the fundamentals. It makes sense. Okay? So keep this in mind. Entertain those possibilities. Some could be speculation, or most could be speculation. But if it makes sense, it's, it could be possible that a scenario like that can happen, but you're well positioned. I hope this episode has brought you some value. Like and subscribe, comment below, and share with others and let them know what's going on. This is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.